Before we develop the student class further, I would like to say a little bit more about the dot notation, because the dot notation is really important when you actually program in an object-oriented way. Let's now, okay, so this is a tester you can review, which will build the object structure like this, as we illustrated in the previous video. Okay, so now I would like to use this particular diagram to illustrate to you how the dot notation can be used. So now, first of all, again, I would like to remind you about this is how you can understand the dot notation conceptually. So now in Java, you will actually use the dot notation like the dot. But conceptually, in the diagram, you can think about whenever I say dot, that means I'm pointing some arrow over here. Okay, so that's something we mentioned briefly in the previous video. Okay, so now how can we understand this? I'm going to give you lots of examples in this case. Okay, now, first of all, let's start with the simplest case. If I talk about just S over here, I am referring to this particular student objects over here. Now, what about if I say S dot? So what does that mean? If I say S dot, if I say S dot, that means I'm following the address that is stored in S and go to that particular object in the memory. Okay, that's what S dot means. Okay, that's what it means. Okay, so now what about, let's do something simple. If I say S dot name, and if I say S dot courses, and also if I say S dot NOC, so these three are all valid. When I say S dot courses, when I say S dot name, I'm really referring to this particular attribute over here, which has the value gym. If I say S dot courses, I'm referring to this particular attribute which store the address of some array of size 5. I'm really talking about this particular value over here, which is just another address, okay, which we can follow further. So whenever you see that the attributes of your objects is of reference type, including array, that means you can go further using the array, using the dot notation, or using the arrow in your diagram. Similarly, for S.NOC over here, that means we are talking about this particular value, which can be 0 or 1 or 2, depending on where you are in the tester. Okay, so these three are all okay. Okay, so these are the first examples I want to give to you. Okay, so now the principle is, as long as the attributes is of reference type, you may use, sorry, I'm running out of space. Let me just put it up. You may use dot to go further. Okay, that's really the important principle. I'll just highlight that. As long as the attribute is of reference type, you may use dot to go further. Okay, in this case, S.name, that's it, because name itself actually it's of string type. It usually don't go further with string type. Let me just say that for now, but let's just talk about, whenever I say reference type, I really talk about the class that we create by ourselves. How about that? And then S.NOC, in this case, that's it. You cannot go any further because NOC is of type integer. It's not reference. Okay? But now, when you say S.courses over here, you can see that courses is storing some address over here. That means we can go further using the dot. Okay? So now what can we do? So now let's try that specifically. So now if I say, let me use a different color here. If I say S dot courses over here is referring to basically an array over here. Okay, it's referring to an array, this particular array. But now when we talk about array, we don't really use dot. We do have our own notation for referring to the array. The way we do that is by using the square brackets over here. Okay, so this is the only, I would say, little exception that we have to say whenever you talk about an attribute of array type, you don't really use dot. because later on we're going to refer to which position of the array, in which case we'll use the square brackets, which is array-specific notation. Okay, that's the only little exception you got to get used to. Okay, so now for this particular arrow over here, that's really the square brackets we have. Okay, and now which index can be 0, can be 1, can be 2, can be 3, can be 4. We put the index over here. Okay, for example, you say s.courses at position 0. Okay, and you can also say s.courses at position 1, and etc. Okay, that's the second group I would like to give as an example, and then we'll go further. So now the question is, can we go further, right? So now when I say s.courses, oh, let me just use this one here. When I say s.courses at position 0, so what do I mean? I'm talking about this particular slot, right? This particular slot over here, which is storing the address of some course attributes. In which case, of course, I can go further by following this particular arrow over here. Okay, so now let's see the third group. Okay, so now let's try to go a little bit further. So now let's say this. I'll put it here. Okay, that's the third group. Let me put it here. Okay, so now I can say s dot, let me just say for short, can I just say CS? So that really means courses. Okay, s dot courses at position 0, for which we know we can go further. If we say dot, so that means we're following this arrow over here, and then we're referring to this particular course record objects, for which we can say either title or marks. Okay, so we can say title over here. We can also say s dot courses at position 1, and also I can say marks. So now you can see that over here I'm using index 0 here and using index 1. Let's see very specifically. When I say s.courses at position 0, which is referring to this arrow over here, dot title, that means I want to go to this particular course objects and then see the title. Okay, and the title would just be this particular title, which is EECS 1022. Okay, let's see again. What about s.cs1? Okay, let's go from the beginning. When I say s, which is here, dot, follow the arrow over here, and then courses, go to the array, attributes, and now we got a brackets, which means follow the arrow over here, and then go to position 1. So now we are position 1 here, so now we are here. Okay, so far so good. And then we say dot again. So dot means we're going to follow this particular arrow over here, okay, indicated by the address that's stored here. And then dot marks. So that means we're referring to this particular attribute, which is 0. Okay, you should really try to practice to see this, how to use a dot notation. Is really, really crucial when you program in object-oriented programming language like Java. Okay, now there's one more group I want to show you, okay, which is also interesting to see. Now, what's going to happen if I say s dot cs courses at position 2? Let me use different color actually, because it's just another group I would like to show you. Let me use different color. When I say s dot courses at position, let me say 3. What's going to be its value? We used to say at position 1 is actually this value over here, right? So what about at position 3? It's actually this value over here, in which case it's just null, right? Just null. Okay, no question about it. Okay, now what's going to happen? If I say, I'm going to put it here, okay? I'm going to say s dot courses, okay, dot here, at position 3, and then I say dot title. What's going to happen here? Think about what we're trying to do here. We say that s dot courses will give us this courses over here, and then use the bracket notation. It's going to follow the arrow to see the array, and then at position 3. So now we are here. And now it's storing the address now at the moment. And then when we say dot, again we follow the arrow over here, and then which points to nowhere because it's storing the null address. But now we are finding the title over here, which does not exist because currently this slot here points to no objects in the memory. So if you're trying to inquire about some attributes of that, you're going to run into some error. Okay, there's something you will see quite often if you make a mistake. It's called null pointer exception. Okay, I'm going to write it here. Okay, it's going to be something called null pointer exception. Because s point cs courses at position 3 is null. Okay, can I just illustrate this last case for you specifically? Okay, and then that's about what I want to illustrate to you in this particular tutorial video. I don't want you to get uncomfortable about the dot notation because that's something you want to make use of the most if you program in Java. Okay, let me just go back to my Android Studio, and then I want to just illustrate to you one thing over here. Okay, let's say already at the end of this, so we got exactly this diagram here. So what I want to do is I will want to say s out. So s dot courses at position 3. First of all, I want to illustrate this. Okay, so s dot courses at position 3. Okay, let's see exactly what it is. Okay, so now let me execute the tester over here. Let's see what it will be. It's gonna build a Grado, and then it tells me that it is null. Okay, you can see that over here, null. Okay, exactly what we said before. It's pointing to null. Okay, now what's gonna happen if I say something like this? Okay, s dot courses at position 3 dot title dot title. Okay, it compiles because the reason that it compiles because we're just following the arrow. Okay, whether it will work or not, the Java compiler does not care. It's really up to the runtime monitor. Okay, so now let's see this. Let's see what's gonna happen. If we try this one here, let's see what's gonna happen. We know that's null. You can see that up to now, this is null, but now when we say dot title, which means we go to nowhere and want to find out what the title is. Of course, he's gonna run into trouble. Okay, I wanted you to see over here. Exception in, so we got an exception called java.language null pointer exception. So that's exactly what I wrote to you on the iPad. And where did we have that exception? You can click on this hyperlink over here. It tells you that line number 21, which is exactly where we had that thing over here. Okay, I'll make a very quick comments for you. Null pointer exception here because s dot courses is null, making it impossible to go to look up an object's course record object to look up the title of a course object in the memory. Okay, that's exactly what I said. But now, for simplicity for later tests, I will simply just you can select the block and then Control and /. I'll just put the whole block into comments. Okay, just as a reminder. But I can definitely try by uncomment this again. Okay, again for this video here, nothing about programs, but I really want to show you how you can use the dot notation. You should really get used to it. And as we add in the third model class later in the tutorial series, things will get even more complicated. However, the principle still applies. The same principle about dot notation. And we'll see.